If you have your copy of the bulletin with you this morning, I'd invite you to take it out. And once again, on the inside of the front cover, you will find a version of the Lord's Prayer. This one comes from the Message paraphrase from Eugene Peterson. And if you have it, would you join me in praying these words together to God? With a God like this loving you, you can pray very simply, like this: Our Father in heaven, reveal who you are, set the world right, do what's best, as above, so below. Keep us alive with 3 square meals, keep us forgiven with you and forgiving others, keep us safe from ourselves and the devil. You're in charge, you can do anything you want, you're ablaze in beauty. Yes, yes, yes. Well, I'd like to begin my message this morning by offering you the chance for a little quiz, a little Bible quiz this morning. Anyone here would like to hazard a guess at the answers to these questions, or perhaps you know them just like that and you can show off your Bible knowledge. So here's the first question. What is the one and only miracle that Jesus performs that appears in all 4 Gospels in our Bibles? Tough one, hey? Pardon me?
Feeding the 5,000.
Ooh, Tom, good job.
A number of people, feeding a number of people.
Feeding a multitude by multiplying what?
Bread and fish.
Bread and fish, yes. Yes, that appears in all 4 of our Gospels. Turning water into wine is just in the Gospel of John, in John chapter 2. But all 4 Gospels contain the story of Jesus taking bread and multiplying it to feed the multitudes that were there with him in the wilderness. Here's another question. Of Jesus' 7 famous I am sayings that are in the Gospel of John, we've talked about this before, so I know you're going to be right on this one. You know the ones I'm talking about. I am the true vine. I am the resurrection and the life. I am the good shepherd. Out of those 7 I am sayings that Jesus makes, which is the first to appear?
I am bread.
Oh, Judy, good guess. Yes, I am the living bread. I am the bread of life. I am the bread that came down from heaven, and you must eat my flesh, drink my blood in order to have life. Oof. Well, here's another. And you all get this, I know you will. What's the one and only food that Jesus commands his disciples to eat in remembrance of him? Bread. Yes. Take and eat. This is my body, which is broken for you. Do this as often as you eat it in remembrance of me. Something about bread that is to remind us of Jesus. Here's another. What comes to mind as the longest running miracle in the entire Bible? Miracle that just keeps going on and on and on. Did you hear Tom there? Manna from heaven. Now, I gotta admit, I stand to be corrected on this one because I don't actually know, and I didn't find this in any book, but it's my impression that for a miracle to be repeated day after day after day, 6 days out of 7, year after year after year for 40 years, that would be like a really, really long-running miracle in the Bible. The manna that the Israelite people ate each day throughout their whole 40-year wilderness journey. A 40-year sustained miracle. Amazing. And your last question, again, an easy one. What's the request that is found at the very center of the Lord's Prayer, which Jesus taught us to pray? Give us this day our daily bread. Yes, thank you, Heidi. Or in the paraphrase that we just read from, keep us alive with 3 square meals. Well, all of that is to say that if we hadn't noticed before, bread is really important in the Bible. This simple and humble food is given a tremendous significance in the biblical story, and that is partly evident from its central place in this model prayer which Jesus gave us to pray. And I'd like to invite Tom to put the next slide up on the screen, if you will. I have here a visual representation of the Lord's Prayer that shows the centrality of this particular request. And so we can think of it in terms of this V-shaped structure. It goes like, let's see if I can get it to work. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever and ever. Amen. We see that it's structured in a very balanced kind of way, with an address at the beginning corresponding to a kind of a benediction or a blessing at the end. Three requests coming down the left-hand side there. Hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. And three more requests kind of going up the right-hand side. Forgive us our debts, lead us not into temptation, deliver us from evil. Three requests on either side. The first requests are Godward focused, and the last three requests are very much related with our life and the nitty-gritty of life here on earth. And at the fulcrum of this triangle, at the base, at the pivot point of this prayer, there is this request, give us this day our daily bread. Two of my highly respected teachers at Nazarene Theological Seminary when I attended there, Drs. Morris Weigelt and D. Freeborn, co-wrote a book called The Lord's Prayer, Living the Lord's Prayer, which is filled with rich insights about this prayer and its significance. And I found them to be the first people I had ever heard to point out this central significance of this request and the way that it functions, in their understanding at least, as this fulcrum point, as this base on which the prayer rests. And they say that when we envision it this way, then daily bread becomes the point at which the divine and the human interact in our lives. Furthermore, if the essence of relationship between the divine and the human is the fundamental issue of grace, then bread becomes the pivot on which the whole prayer style and lifestyle of the follower of Jesus rests. If the essence of relationship between the divine and the human is the fundamental issue of grace, then daily bread becomes the pivot on which the whole prayer style and lifestyle of the follower of Jesus rests. And you can see the way that this request serves as a kind of a connecting point between the Godward-focused requests of the first half of the prayer and the human society-focused prayers of the second half. At the center point, there is this connecting request that draws together human need and divine grace in this marvelous way. They use this phrase, the essence of relationship between the divine and the human is the fundamental issue of grace. Perhaps you're scratching your head inwardly a little bit and saying, excuse me, Pastor, it doesn't say anything here about grace. It's just talking about bread. And I would reply that while it does simply speak of bread, I'm convinced that in this context, bread stands for so much more than just bread. Think of it this way. What are you and I able to provide for ourselves? Nothing really, right? The air we breathe, the clean water we drink, the food we eat, it all comes from outside of us. We can't produce air. We can't produce water. We can't really produce food. Can you make a loaf of bread? As of this year, I can say, yes, I can. As I've told you before, I've done that. But I couldn't have done it without the raw materials, the flour, the water, the salt, the yeast, which went into making that bread. Those all came to me from outside of myself. The oven in which I baked it, I couldn't have built that thing. The natural gas that silently flowed into our house, into that oven, the fire that safely lit that gas. By the way, where did that fire come from? Who thought of fire? Somewhere in human history, fire was an amazing discovery of our ancestors. I sure didn't produce the natural gas or make the arrangements to get it into the house. What about the lovely lady Judy who taught me how to make this bread, how to put the ingredients together in the right proportions and in the right order, and showed me how to mix and then stretch and form that loaf? I didn't make her, and I receive her gracious love and companionship and care as a freely given gift, as a grace, every single day. What about the language with which we communicate, which enabled her to instruct me in how to make bread? The means that she was using to convey these strange sounds that sound very strange to someone who doesn't speak our language. How can that be that there would be this gift of a way to communicate with one another? Newsflash, I didn't invent the English language. Neither did Judy, actually. And neither did you. But without it, without the gift of human language with which we can communicate, just think how helpless we all would be. None of us would have ever reached the age of a week were it not for tender loving care that came entirely from outside of us to sustain and nurture our lives as we come into this world so completely helpless. Continuing with this metaphor of bread, what about this mysterious life force of the yeast that mixed with the water and the flour and the salt and brought those ingredients to life, caused that flour to expand and to grow in the presence of the leaven? What about the mysterious life force that worked in a grain of wheat, which fell into the ground and died, and then somehow in a mysterious way came to life again and pushed up through that dark soil and out into the sunlight a blade of grass, a blade of wheat, which grew and grew and grew and produced many more seeds, some of which eventually, many generations later, became the flour that I put in my bowl. What about the sunlight and darkness and rain and soil that powered that incredible process? I didn't make any of that. It all came from outside of me. I am so contingent, so dependent, so helpless, so utterly dependent. It's actually kind of pathetic. For a proud human being, it's kind of pathetic how helpless we are. The bread loaf that I made was every bit as much a gift of heaven to me as the manna that the Israelites ate in the wilderness. And for every other element and aspect of my life in this world, I am utterly dependent. So this prayer for daily bread is a humble and a humbling prayer. It is an admission of need, of neediness, of utter and complete and abject neediness. I mean, really, you'd think that a healthy, able-bodied, self-respecting person ought to be able to provide for yourself at least one day's worth of bread, right? Can we? Nope. We are dependent for everything we need on something, on someone, outside of ourselves. Humbling, eh? Eat this bread, and every time you eat it, remember me, he said. Remember the grace by which alone you have life. Remember time and time again how helpless and contingent, how fragile and transient your life is, how dependent you are upon grace for every bit of everything you need to live. Let this realization be the foundation of your life and of your self-understanding. Humility. You hear this note of humility in the words of Moses as he preaches to the people of Israel in the book of Deuteronomy chapter 8, as they are camped on the east side of the Jordan River, just making preparations to cross the river into the land that God promised them so long before. And they have come to the end of their long wilderness journey and are about to enter the land that God promised them. But as they do, he stops them and asks them to reflect upon their dependency upon God all through this time. And it's a prelude, spoiler alert, to the fact that they're going to be hard-pressed to keep that same sense of dependency upon God when they move into the promised land. And when all of these riches and wealth come to them, stuff that they never produced and never made, he says, you're gonna forget how helpless and humble you ought to be and how dependent that you are. But he says, remember this, how the Lord your God led you through the wilderness for these 40 years, humbling you and testing you to prove your character and to find out whether or not you would obey his commands. Yes, he humbled you by letting you go hungry and then feeding you with manna, a food previously unknown to you and your ancestors. He did it to teach you that people do not live by bread alone. Rather, we live by every word that comes from the mouth of the Lord. And in the same way that they were humbled by their hunger, because it showed them that they did not have the means to provide for themselves, and then they were humbled by God's gracious provision of manna that sustained their lives all along that long, long journey. In the same way, Jesus is teaching us with this prayer to humble ourselves in the daily remembrance of our basic neediness and our basic helplessness. Humility is essential to being truly human, to being our true, made in the image of God selves, because it keeps us close to the ground, to the literal dust or soil from which we were made and to which we will return. The word humility comes from the same root as the word humus, which is an essential component of soil or dirt. Humus is that dark organic material formed in soil from the decomposition of plant and animal matter, and it plays a vital role in plant nutrition and in water retention and in soil structure. This is the humble, non-fancy, non-flashy stuff from which we are made. Knowing this and bearing this in mind keeps us grounded. Yes, the pun is intentional. Grounded in reality. It's the ground of gratitude, which would be the natural response of everyone who knows that everything they have in life is a gift. Gratitude. Humility and gratitude are fundamentally joined. And humility is what we are fundamentally taught by this prayer. Give us this day our daily bread. We got nothing. As Dan Boone writes, mature believers, people, you might say, who've been praying and being formed by this prayer over a long period of time, are deeply aware of their neediness and are deeply grateful for all they have received. I've been reading a wonderful book this spring by an author named Ken Shigematsu. I think I've mentioned it a time or two before. He's a pastor in Vancouver who is of Japanese heritage. And he describes near the end of his book, which is entitled Now I Become Myself, about his aging mother and how in recent weeks, as he wrote the book, her cancer, which she'd battled with for some time, had returned. She'd been diagnosed with lung cancer a few years ago and had had a successful operation. It had been sent into remission, but now it was back and had metastasized into her spine and pancreas, and she had decided not to pursue further treatment. And he says it's hard to see her in physical pain. There are these times these days when she would like her life on earth to be over, to be liberated from her suffering and fully alive in the presence of Jesus. But mostly, she is full of peace. Although she has lost more than 30 pounds and now weighs only about 70 pounds, though the bones in her arms are visible under her sagging skin, I have never seen her more luminously joyful. Everyone who has come into contact with her recently, her children, the palliative care nurse, and even the young man who dropped off an adjustable hospital bed for her, can see that she is brilliantly and beautifully incandescent, light flowing from every pore. I've had a front row seat to my mother's life for more than half a century now, and have heard stories from each chapter of her life. As a young girl in war-torn Japan, she lived with her grandmother in the countryside during a time when children were evacuated from the cities to rural communities to minimize their exposure to bombs. My mother's mother would occasionally send care packages to her, chocolates or cookies, but her grandmother with whom she was living would steal them, snatch them, toss them in the air, and catch them in her mouth just to torment my mom. Sometimes my mom was so hungry that she ate flowers in a nearby field. After the war, she asked her father, who had run successful businesses in support of the war effort, to allow her to study in America. And in this more traditional era, he said, "If you study in America, no man will ever marry you." She responded, "I'll swim across the ocean." So he relented and supported her studies at leading universities in America. Not long after she returned to Japan, much to her father's surprise, she got engaged to the man who would eventually become my dad. And her father, then at the height of his career as an entrepreneur, chartered a plane to bring guests from Tokyo to the southern city of Kagoshima for the wedding ceremony. After she and my dad were married and our family had moved to Vancouver, my dad worked for a few years as a writer for a newsletter about the Canadian economy for Japanese corporations. It had a very small circulation and our family struggled financially. When I was 9 years old, I remember receiving donated toys at Christmas and food hampers from our local church. Through my mom's years of privilege, she did not grow smug and conceited. During her experience of financial deprivation, though it was frustrating and anxiety-producing at times, she did not grow embittered. My waywardness as a teenager caused her to recommit her life to Christ, and I have had the gift of seeing her steady transformation over the years as she's grown more and more into the likeness of Christ. She's gone from being overly focused on her children's educational achievements to expressing that character and kindness are more important than intelligence or academic advancement. She's also gone from being somewhat prone to anxiety to exhibiting a growing peace and mellowness of soul as she entrusts her life more fully to God. A couple of weeks ago, at a small gathering around her bed, some family members offered words to honor her. Ken writes, "My adolescent son, among other things, thanked his grandmother for her kindness, blurting out his appreciation for her generous gift of cash on his birthday and chocolate cupcakes. My mom beamed and retorted, I have so much respect for you, Joey. You're so genuine, so authentic. You never put on pretenses. I want to become more like you. Even as she was on the brink of eternity, she wanted to shed some of her last vestiges of needing to look good in front of others in order to become her true self. And if, as you and I experience the high points and valleys of our lives, we also discover that God is weaving together the details of our lives, we will experience the wonder of gratitude. As we experience the pleasure of doing things that make us come alive and the delight of serving others, we will become the beautiful masterpieces God created us to be. We too, like Ken's mom, will radiate the light of our original glory, our truest and most light-giving selves into the world. When you pray, say, "Our Father in heaven, give us this day our daily bread." At dinner and discovery this week, we discussed at some length the fact that prayer is not primarily about God management, about getting things from God. Prayer is in large part about being spiritually formed and transformed. That is certainly true of this prayer that our Lord Jesus gave us. It is a prayer by which God desires to humble us, keeping us ever in touch with our need for daily bread, and beyond that, our need for daily grace. For the provision of all that we need to live is from beyond ourselves, a humbling truth. And as you and I grasp that humbling truth, may it produce in us a profound gratitude for the rich gifts God has given, and thus may your life and mine be filled with radiant joy.